there was a strange other glitch that
I don't know what happened at the end.
Whatever. We saw a little bit of the end twice. Yeah.
So, Werner, can you talk about your experience plunging into all of this footage, and and how you made the selections the choices you made?
I think it became very quickly evident what I was after, and of course, it was not only the spectacular footage, which is quite obvious. You have to have it in the film, because what I wanted to do was to celebrate the achievement, the imagery that they have created and left us. So that was main target, and of course beyond that I had the feeling this should be a celebration of cinema itself. So, and because of that, you do not always need the spectacle. You see little things sometimes, like you see tumbling rocks, and then you see tiny little strange sort of flowers or seeds jumping and tumbling along on the ground, or very unobtrusive things which are very telling. They had a phenomenal eye for things, and they left us really extraordinary footage, a worldview that you do not normally see in cinema. I'm thinking, just as it comes to mind, this little monkey that goes into the hair.
Nits out of some.
Yes, and searching for lice in the hair of Maurice. So those were things that also very, very intriguing, because it's such a unique worldview, and I wanted to make it shine. I wanted to make it look good. And I wanted to give them the best music I could find in the world, and do a commentary that did them justice.
Can you talk about your own history of fascination with volcanoes? This isn't the first time that this has come up in your work.
Well, I've done an early film, I think something like 1974 or 76. I think most of you were not even born yet, or your parents weren't even born yet, on the island of Guadeloupe in the Caribbean. In the film is called La Soufrière. In this case, yes, a volcano plays an important part, but it's only a secondary role, because I had read in daily reports that the mountain was about to explode. A little bit like Mount St. Helens, the formation and geological structure of the mountain was in such a way that it would explode first before a lava eruption could occur. And the explosion would be at least the size of 7, 8, 9 atomic bombs, Hiroshima size. And yes, it impressed me. And but then I read that abruptly the entire southern island, part of the island, was evacuated categorically, and one single poor black farmer who lived on the slope had refused to be evacuated. And I said, I want to go there. I want to meet the man, not so much meet the volcano, but the man, because I was puzzled about his attitude towards death. So I scrambled and got there, and that was really dangerous, because it was obvious it would explode. All predictions were going into the direction of a massive explosion, and all the scientists even fled. And so I was the only one with 2 cinematographers. It actually did not explode. It wasn't that much the volcano. Actually, a later explanation was the night we spent before we went up to the mountain, there was a seismic crisis with 1,100 shock waves up to, I think, 5.1 on the Richter scale. It really shook you badly, and probably all the kinetic energy built down the explosive energy that was somehow under the formation, geological formation. So it was an inevitable catastrophe that didn't occur. And then I made another film in Antarctica, Encounters at the End of the World, and there's a sequence about a volcano in Antarctica, Mount Erebus, quite high and quite active. And I met a British volcanologist, Clive Oppenheimer, and we became friends, and then we made Into the Inferno, and then I did this one. So but I should stop it now. Enough of volcanoes. No, I'm very fond of them in a way. There's something, a spectacle in them that is unique and very cinematic. And this kind of kinetic energy and this enormous collisions of forces is something which is very much cinema. And this is why Mad Max has been such a success from the very first moment on kinetic energy of high-speed collisions of vehicles. So it's very, very cinematic. Why it is, I don't know, but I can see it, I can tell.
There's no denying it. Let's take a couple questions from the audience right here.
Commonality between a lot of the characters that you bring to us in that they have a passion that is riding the bridge of what some would call foolishness and some would call outright bravery. So what do we have to learn from those people, and what do they have in common, whether it's Timothy Treadwell and Hiro Onoda, or,
I feel a kinship. There's something that brings them very close to me. I admire the courage, and but in both cases, both Timothy Treadwell in Grizzly Man went beyond a borderline where he, in a very strange misunderstanding and misreading of wild nature, a philosophical misunderstanding, as if wild nature was all fluffy and the bear's fluffy, cuddly animals that you had to embrace, and you had to sing songs to them and tell them how much you loved them and even touch them in their face. There was something where a borderline was not respected. You see, it's fine to, we should not love the grizzly bear, but we should respect the boundaries of the grizzly bear. And there was a transgression which was, I wouldn't say foolish, but it was lethal. There was something, a Disneyization of wild nature that turned against him. So he didn't see the borderlines, and the Kraffts, in a way, they probably knew the borderlines. They probably knew that most of the time they were just too close. And for doing real science, you don't have to be 10 feet away from a crater eruption. You just don't need to be that close. And in order to protect a grizzly bear, you do not need to hug the bear. It's actually, that there's something counterproductive. So although I feel a kinship, I've been always a professional, and I have respected the distance to the bear, and I have respected the distance to the crater itself. Although I had some close calls, I remember with Clive Oppenheimer in the previous film, Into the Inferno, we decided we would go from the outer rim, descend to an inner rim of the volcano where all this lava was ejected. And we had these suits on, and all of a sudden, and I depended on the expertise of the volcanologist. He said, it looks quite okay, there's a calm phase, let's go there. And then all of a sudden there were two massive slabs flying through the air, and some of them can be as large as a truck, and they're very hot, and when they come down on you, you can wear any kind of suit, it doesn't help you. So I thought this was silly, get out fast, we want to come back with a movie. And same thing, I think Treadwell was not challenging death, it was just a misreading of what wild nature really was. For the Kraffts, I don't know. It's probably to some degree to be the daredevils for the TV audiences in France, and they had a reputation for that. At the same time, and we have to do them justice, being the daredevils, they attracted a lot of attention to volcanic eruptions, and they were very much into early warning systems. And Pinatubo in the Philippines was the first case where 400,000 people were evacuated, and only about 1,400 stayed, and some 400 died of those 1,400. So, and that was more Clive Oppenheimer, by the way, but also backed up by the Kraffts.
Look on the aisle there.
I was wondering about.
Can you speak up a little bit?
I can repeat.
I was wondering about the selection of the music. You mentioned earlier that it was music that felt right to you. I was wondering if the Kraffts ever set any of their films to music, or if they had any connections to music that you discovered while you were looking into their work.
Did you hear? He was asking about the music, and yeah.
Yes, most of the music was very, very quick choices. And it was obvious there would be some classical music. It starts with Fauré's Requiem. You hear some of Verdi's Requiem, Ricordare Jesu Pie, that piece, and that, and for example, Johann Sebastian Bach, which is not a Requiem but High Mass in B minor, the Kyrie. But of course I have Ernst Reisiger cello and Sardinian singers. And then, for example, in one of or two events, I had the feeling there should be a Mexican pop singer, Ana Gabriel, whom I really admire. And it's a very popular song that you hear. One of them, when you look at YouTube, this song has been downloaded on YouTube 250 million times. So it's really popular worldwide. And I said, that should fit. I know it fits. We put it on the editing table and it fit right away. And they said, we stick to it. But the song only has a certain length. And it was a little bit too short. So we cheated and we duplicated a few phrases so it would be in length correct. And sometimes the music itself would dictate. The music couldn't be changed. The music would dictate the flow of the images, and the sequence would be over exactly when the music was over. So it was a strange correspondence. Sometimes images dictated the music. Sometimes music dictated the images and the flow of things.
Another part of his question was, did you ever know of the Kraffts to have paired their images to music?
Not to my knowledge. Yeah, well, they did a few shows, but it was very bad music. It was something like elevator music. So, and I think I'm glad that I could do this, because, of course, I wanted to make a big movie one day, and I didn't have the chance anymore. So I had the feeling, yes, it was good that I could step in. And it was probably good that another filmmaker stepped in as well and made another film on them. And there may be 5, 6, 7 more films made from this footage. There's enough in it. It's a very strange very strange correspondence between footage and people who are not alive anymore, and you all of a sudden take the responsibility on your shoulders. I had no problem whatsoever with it.
All right. Okay, right here. I would never give your microphone away. What?
I'm just wondering, when it comes to making documentary films versus, say, a narrative feature or a work of fiction, do you find that that is a similar kind of voice inside of you as a filmmaker, or does that kind of inspiration, that creativity come from a different place?
No, there's no contradiction or not two different voices. Sometimes I keep saying I do not make documentaries. Many of them are feature films in disguise. And the film The Fire Within is one of those examples where you have something which is more musical than a real documentary. And I'm transgressing into fields that you normally would, and into procedures that you would only apply to feature films. And I do that in documentaries. I'm very careful with casting. I do repeat scenes, which nobody normally does. For example, in Little Dieter Needs to Fly, some of the key moments in the film were told to my camera 4 or 5 or 6 times by the protagonist, who has gone through this incredible ordeal. And he was 42 minutes long in one key passage. And I said, Dieter, we have only maybe 4 or 5 minutes. Bring it down and give me some details that are important. He would still tell the unimportant details. I said, Dieter, we have to do it again. So you normally do that in feature films only. And I do believe that filmmaking, the kind of documentary filmmaking that I do, should divorce itself from journalism. Almost everything that you see is either issue films or investigative journalism, which is okay, let them do it. But in documentaries we can do so much better, and we can reach such deeper strata of truth and insight and illumination that we can have when we are journalists. So if you're a filmmaker and you are planning documentaries, divorce yourself from journalism. That's the first thing. And apply things that are normally not part of let's say the dogma out there. And what the film industry is doing, or the TV stations are doing, it's just awful. I can't see it anymore. I don't want to see it anymore. So, and everybody says, yeah, we have to do cinema verite nonsense. That was the answer of the 1960s. And that was the time of the Vietnam War, of which you know very little because you were not born yet. So, it's not two voices, and there's no yet a third voice in me because I'm acting in films normally as a villain, and I'm good as a villain on screen. Or I stage operas, or I write prose and poetry, and so it's not a second, third, fourth, and fifth voice. It's just me. It's just cinema, and it's just literature.
We're going to wrap it up there. Werner will be back at the festival tomorrow night with his films, Theater of Thought. It is sold out, but there may be some rush tickets for people dedicated to want to try to get tickets. It's at the SVA Theater up on 23rd Street. We have 9 days ahead of us of the festival. Please grab a catalog or a flyer on your way out. Thanks very much for coming. Thanks especially to Werner Herzog.
Thank you.